other box is Carrie Ingraham, who is a senior fellow at the Discovery Institute. Before we get to the interview, a couple housekeeping matters. I'd like to thank you guys. The live element of these shows is something that I truly enjoy. I love when you guys give interaction, DMs, retweets, all of it is so very welcome and appreciated. Thank you. To our sponsors, first, we always complain about big food companies taking over the food supply. There is something we can do about it, and that's to support independent, local operators. Independence Arc Farms, Marco there, grass-fed, grass-finished beef. Please give it a go. Also, if any of you heard or watched my speech in New Orleans a couple weeks ago, talking about owning physical gold and silver, you can do that through us at the American Gold Exchange. And finally, our most important sponsor, unfilteredinvestor.com, which is basically Bobby and Mike Arnold breaking down technical analysis, and they are masterful at it. Carrie, I'm so sorry you had to sit through that long spiel. You're an important person. As a matter of fact, you're so important that the last time you canceled us because you were going to the White House for the 4th time in 1 year. When you go to the White House, can you describe what it's like?
Unbelievable. Every time I've received an invite, I've kind of been shocked. Like, do they have the right person? Do they mean to call me? Like, this was not on the radar. It started back in March of this year. Got a call just the day prior to when I had to jump on a flight, 6 hours.
How does it show up on your phone? Does it say the White House?
I got a call Monday saying, "Can you be in DC later this week to be at the White House?" And I was kind of like, "Wait, what?" Sure. Like, I can clear my schedule, you bet. And then the next day, got a call, 8 a.m., got an email from the White House social office asking me to be a guest of President Trump at a signing ceremony to start the process of dismantling the U.S. Department of Education. So got the official invite that morning. Actually, I'd been asked the day prior, but you don't really book the flight till you get that invite. Got the invite at 8 a.m., 11 o'clock, left for the airport. And it was absolutely amazing just to be in the East Room and to have somebody that just cares so much about education leading our nation right now, recognizing that it's moms and dads who need to be empowered, and this 45-year disastrous experiment of the U.S. Department of Education that's wasted $3 trillion and student learning has only gone down. Like, we have to do something about that. And to have somebody in the White House that says, like, I'm going to put action to this, we are going to break this down, back to local control, let states innovate, be competitive with one another, and actually be accountable for education. And so, such an honor to be there in March. That was the first visit. It was just a fabulous day.
That sounds awesome. And again, if you guys who are watching are not familiar with the work that Carrie does, with the work that Corey DeAngelis does, these people are doing God's work. Our education system is fully messed up. That's why we have Carrie here. So you mentioned making it more local, bringing it back to the states. We are huge states' rights advocates. I believe the federal government ends up obfuscating failure and propping things up, and then all you get is more and more failure. But specifically, walk us through what you think would be the best steps to take within the next 3 years to revamp our public education system, or is it so entirely messed up that the only way to do it is to go through alternatives?
That's a huge question. And I don't think it's going to take 3 years to start the process. What just happened actually last week was the Department of Education came out with a massive announcement. So, again, in March, they said they're going to dismantle this thing. They started downsizing, cutting out all these radical ideologies, cutting spending that had nothing to do with academics. But what they did last week is they moved 6 key functions of the Department of Education to 4 other federal agencies that are going to do a better job, that'll be more equipped. And that is foundational to actually dismantling this thing. And so that's happening right away. Those movements, although it was announced last week, I mean, they immediately took effect. We're already seeing the fruit of that. I mean, it's no different than what they did earlier this year with moving student loans to the SBA. Like, do you really want education bureaucrats with this mega portfolio? Like, they're not finance experts.
No.
Let's get that over to a department that actually handles lots of loans. And so it's just common sense things. And then pushing everything back out to the states, letting the states then be accountable to actually.
So are you saying that a gender studies major is not as remunerative or as valuable as an electrical engineering major? Is that what how dare you? Bobby, you go.
Yeah, Carrie, you actually started to answer the question I was going to ask you. From perspective of the dismantling of the Department of Education, where is that? You talked a little bit about certain things being moved to other agencies that would be more effective. Obviously, the left, and I am saying directly the left, has just an absolute blitzkrieg on both social media and regular media that they're taking money away from your children by dismantling this. Is the process ongoing? And what are the parts that are going away that we don't need? Is it all bureaucracy, or is there other parts that are just sort of counterproductive to education?
Let me start with flagging an op ed that Secretary McMahon had in USA Today on Sunday. And she said, look, we just had the government shut down for 40 plus days and nobody missed the Department of Education. Like school children still got to school on time, buses ran, sports continued, academics, like it was seamless for education in our country while we were shut down. And it just is point in case, like we do not need all these bureaucrats to sit around and just push money. Now, the funding isn't going away, and she did an excellent job in that op ed making that clear. But to your point, what the opposition is saying is like funding's going away from special education. Well, actually, if they looked at what the funding in special education was taken off of and allocated to academics, it was to train special education teachers in critical race theory, DEI, like nothing that is going to help them serve those kids. Instead, that money has been allocated to actually prepare those educators to serve students with special needs. So, this whole idea, like that they're defunding special ed and all these other programs, like that's all they've got is just lies and, fear mongering. Because the facts is it's common sense. And what they're doing is going to drastically improve education for children.
Carrie, I've known a couple of teachers in my life, and I would be the first. They were in the Chicago public school system. They weren't good. They actually weren't good people in my view, but that's a whole nother thing. The teachers that I've known, it's been two of them, said basically the same thing. I got into teaching because I wanted to take summers off. How do you incentivize teachers to be good at their job and compete? Is it all money or are there other ways? Obviously, I don't think you got into what you do strictly for financial gain. There was something else there. So to the people that don't have that sort of soul drive that you have to get into education, how do you incentivize teachers to be better at their jobs?
Well, let me start by saying where I started my education career was 8 years in a private school. So those salaries are a lot lower than public education. And it was in Arkansas. So, yes, cost of living was lower. But when I got my first job offer at age 22 for that teaching position, I thought, is this for the semester? Surely this is not for the year. I will not say the amount, but it was shocking.
Why? Say the amount. It could be fun.
Okay.
It was like $22,000. How much?
$21,000.
Oh
Now
my God.
I did coach 6 teams, so I had a $4,000 stipend. So rounded
Wow.
up there to 25. But it's like, wow.
Wow.
Okay, so to your point, Bobby, like I did not get into this for money, but we have all the incentives wrong in education. So teachers are incentivized with a salary stair step schedule to stay in the profession longer regardless of performance. And it's virtually impossible to fire a bad teacher because of the strengths of the unions. And so the longer they stay in, the more money they get. And so they're completely disincentivized to have to prove that they're educating students. It's not linked with like student test scores or student growth. It's simply just seat time. So you get high achieving people that come into the profession age 22, in their young 20s, they start having families, more expenses. Well, they often exit the profession because they're hard workers and they see, my work isn't being rewarded for producing incredible student learning. I'm going to go into a different profession. So sometimes they go into like private tutoring that gives more flexibility with their families, or other times, they'll just completely leave education because it doesn't reward high performance. And we've got to flip that on its head because in our country today, based on the latest nation's report card, the NAEP scores that came out in January, it shows that 7 out of 10 kids in our country cannot read on grade level and cannot do math on grade level in our public schools. Only 3 out of 10 kids are. And the educator is the number one factor of student learning, that classroom teacher during the school day. We have to motivate people that are high achievers to get in this profession. So reforming teacher certification, we need subject matter experts, not necessarily just people who come out of these general education and then woke teacher colleges that are not necessarily equipped to teach things. We want somebody that has the expertise, experience, and real world practical knowledge. So let's get people that have experience in business to teach high school business classes instead of somebody just coming up the pipe of a general ed. Also, to that point in career technical education, we still have the same hurdle. Why can't we get a retired carpenter with the passion, the experience,
Amen. Yeah.
unlock that drive in kids? They can tell stories. Oh, 20 years ago, I was in this old house. Like that is going to engage kids. Then maybe your PE teacher who, after a few years of doing that, thinks, oh, I want to teach shop or I want to do the electrical program. Like this is not going well in our country. And a lot of it is that classroom teacher. It maybe doesn't have the expertise or is not rewarded for performance. They're truly disincentivized. So
I
to
don't
your
think
question,
there's,
we've got to change those.
yeah, I don't think there's anybody walking the earth with any kind of a soul that would complain about a teacher making 200, 300,000 a year if kids were being prepared. I don't know anyone that would care about that for a teacher or a fireman or all the people that politicians mentioned are getting hurt whenever they're trying to blame the other side for something. Our seniors, our teachers, our firefighters. If I could, you mentioned something I kind of wanted to ask about anyway, is sort of trade specific schools. So I look at this kind of two ways. I don't know how to churn butter. I don't know that I need to know how to churn butter. Now, relating this to kids growing up now, do they still need to know that the square root of 169 is 13 or that Shakespeare wrote Othello? Or do they still need to know these things? You talked in an interview that I watched recently about West Michigan Aviation Academy. In that type of a setup, do they still have to read classics? And, obviously for aviation, you need to do some math. How does that kind of a situation work?
Yes, let me dial it back a little bit and just talk about something I wrote earlier this year where I highlight the West Michigan Aviation Academy. It was a short policy brief called The Case for Industry Specific High Schools. And these schools differ than a typical trade school because they have top academics with them, as well as just high character development, high standards for kids. And so the West Michigan Aviation Academy is the very best one I've seen throughout our whole country. Was founded in 2010 by businessman, entrepreneur, and pilot himself, Dick DeVos, who saw in North America, we have a massive pilot shortage. And again, this was pre 2010. And he looked eyes down the road, we're only going to have people traveling more, shipment of goods. Everyone now is ordering things online. How much the aviation industry is growing as well as going to continue to grow, but yet we don't have equipped workers to go into that. So he said, here's what I can do. I can take my business network, I can take my passion for flying, and also his love for education and make a difference. So he founded a public charter school. It's open to any student in the state, and it's located adjacent to the Gerald Ford Airport. And so they share the airstrips, keeps the cost down. And he's got kids coming to that school, low income, middle income, who have never been in an airplane in their life in ninth grade.
Wow.
And by junior year, these students are doing flights. By senior year, it's solo flights and then a solo flight across the state. And then kind of that final thing is a night solo flight across the state. I mean,
That
absolutely
is
changed
so
the trajectory
cool.
of their lives. But when they're coming, I mean, if they don't get to school with their uniform, they have a simple dress code, collared shirt, khakis, they're not going to trust them to fly an airplane if they're not super motivated, hitting it out of the park in all of their core courses. And a lot of kids are taking AP classes, a demographic of students who typically would be completely checked out of school and not taking AP classes. They're not going to be able to do these things. But beyond aviation, they've got build a plane course where it takes about a year and a
That is
half.
so
And the
cool.
students put together an 8,000 part kit, full FAA certified airplane. The school then sells it once it's built, purchases a new kit. I mean, just imagine, like, we have this chronic absenteeism issue in our country where these kids, especially high schoolers, like they don't see the point of school. They were in middle school when COVID and they saw their teachers didn't show up and they didn't have to go to school. Now with their teenagers, it's completely irrelevant. But if you're at a school and today you're going to get to put that part on that real airplane, like you better bet they're getting to school. They're jazzed up. They're excited. It's changing everything.
That is
Schools
so
also
cool.
got biomedical, STEM, robotic. Kids are getting certified in drones. And on the weekends, I was able to talk to some students when I was there last year who have their own company now. They're sophomores and they're helping do residential as well as commercial real estate aerial shots with their drones, making
That is
tons of
so
money,
cool.
just unlocking passions. But again, it's dovetailed with high academics, high character formation, and industry is spotlighting these kids because that's what they're looking for.
That's awesome. So last, and I want to stick more on this part because I think it's amazing, but that's just one thing. So I'm going to ask how we get that to be more the norm, like what legislation has to be passed. But before that, last time we talked, you were talking about pod schools that were growing up around the country. Like, can you describe what that is? Is it still a trend that's happening? Because you mentioned like some of the woke bullshit stuff that was being taught in public schools and people pushing back against that, which I think is beautiful that people were pushing back against it. Is that still a developing story?
Yes, absolutely. So they were called pods kind of through early COVID, but today they're termed micro schools. So just simply a small school. And it's hard to get a firm number on how many we have because a lot of these micro schools kind of want to fly under the radar because what the opposition is doing is coming after them with zoning requirements
Oh,
to say, like,
Jesus.
you've got 12 kids in your school, but you only have two bathrooms. You've got to have a teacher bathroom, a boy bathroom, a girl bathroom. It's like, come on, like we've got 12 kids, or they'll say parking stalls. Like those are the two main things. They're just trying to close down these schools because they don't want kids to exit that public system because they want more teachers, more union dues, more political power for those teacher unions. So it's exploded. Rough estimates as of last year was around 3 million micro schools. And these are virtually, I'm sorry, students in micro schools would be 3 million out of 50 million kids in our country. They've exploded since then. So I would say it's probably getting close to about 4 million kids in our country educated in a micro school. And this is a great way to do industry specific high schools. So one of the things I'm doing as I'm traveling around the country is I'm talking with industry leaders, business, community leaders who care about education. They want to make a difference, but they really just don't know how. Starting a school can seem intimidating, but it shouldn't because what they can do is they can start a micro school, so just a small private school right in their company facility where they've got all the equipment, they've got the personnel, they don't have to worry about that teacher certification barrier to getting subject matter experts. And they can just start a small pilot. You don't have to build a school, you don't have to create something massive, but just try it for a year. And all of a sudden, they've got the relationships with a future generation that they want to employ in their company. And I guarantee after a year or two, the demand is going to go up and they're going to see this works. We can do this.
Yeah.
So micro school is a great way to do that. But parents want something different and they love that smaller environment.
Right. Well, that's, that I live in Illinois and I work at a public high school too. I'm a basketball coach at high school too. So again, if these teachers who the school that hires me, if you get butthurt because I'm going to talk about how awful the teachers union is, go to hell, fire me. I do not give a shit. But what I was going to say is Illinois pushes back at every turn against alternative schools. And you realize how powerful the teachers unions are when you see that clown Brandon Johnson. That's why he's the mayor of Chicago, is because the teachers union backed him and bullied everyone into it. By the way, what I was going to say to you people, last time Carrie was on the show, our crowd, who I think is, traders, financial people, people involved in economics, we have a little bit of money. We shared it with Carrie. Her mission is unbelievable. If you want to donate to her, which I'm sure you did, which by the way, a lot of you did last time, and we are very, very appreciative. It is discovery.org/education/donate. And we're going to put it up on the screen at some point in time. Did I get that all right, Carrie?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes. Discovery.org/education/donate. You could also just Google it.
Sure.
We would be so grateful, especially as we're rolling into year end right now.
No, stop with that. You're not grateful to us. We're grateful to you. There's we should be sending you money and thanking you for the work that you do. Because the education system, again, I'm someone who's involved in it now, and it is messed up. Bobby?
Yeah, I want to first bring up a question that we got in the public chat here from our friend Widge. Widge watches our shows and is always participating. He said, as much as I love trades, not a huge fan of trade schools, which I don't think you're talking about here, where teachers are paid to attend and students are paying to attend. Love the apprenticeship programs where everyone has to prove themselves. Where do these industry specific schools fit into that sort of a description of schooling?
Yes, great question. And thanks for asking that. So, this charter school up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, West Michigan Aviation Academy, it's a public charter school. So it is tuition free, open to any student in the state. Families that can are actually moving into Grand Rapids to send their kids there. And other families have their child during the week live with a friend, a relative, because it's so attractive. So we've got to replicate these. So families aren't paying in that situation. In the micro school, the place where those are popping up is where there's education savings accounts, particularly. And so that's a way where families can have a portion of their child's state funding to apply towards that tuition. So just 4 years ago, no states had any type of universal school choice. I mean, we were just scratching the surface with 1% of kids in our country who had eligibility to private school scholarship or funds for homeschooling, unless moms and dads had thousands of dollars for tuition money or the ability to homeschool. So less than 1% of kids in our country. That was fewer than 500,000. Fast forward 4 years, and this is what makes me absolutely love what I get to do every day because the results are transformational. We have 17 states today with full universal school choice, meaning all the kids in the state are eligible for a free market K-12 education landscape. And that's over 27 million kids today.
Oh,
But we're not
outstanding.
stopping. Like we've got 17 and, come next legislative session in January, like we're getting 18, we're getting 19. Like every child in America has to have the option to have an education that's going to best serve them. And you guys know, like free markets work. Like it drives up quality, drives down costs, and always spurs innovation. And like, where's that more needed than K-12 education?
All right, Widge, I hope that answers your question. I'm just going to put the website up on a Word document and put it up here so it's in the live show as well.
And let's,
Um,
yeah, and hold it. Just while you're putting it, I
yeah,
thought you
go
were going to take a second because I'm going to say one thing. Bobby and I, we don't talk about politics very often, but we talk about policy all the time. And I
Yeah.
will say this, even if you're a staunch centrist libertarian like we are, it's not a good idea to have a school system that teaches people to support one party. We're trying to turn out students who look at things critically and then decide what to do. And that right now, that's not working in the public school system. And it has showed up in elections and it has showed up in people's advocacy for socialism, which is this you have to be absolutely brain dead to think that's a good idea. There is the website, discovery.org/education/donate. Bobby, sorry to cut you off. I thought you were going to give me a sec because you were putting that up. Sorry.
No, it's okay. This is a really crude way of showing you guys the website. As you can see, I still have the Word document open. So Carrie, if anything's wrong, let me know and I will correct it. But I want to leave this up through this question. I brought up, whether it's important now for kids to know the square root of 169 or read Shakespeare or any of that
You
kind of
just
stuff.
were trying to impress us all with your knowledge of math and your knowledge of Shakespeare. We
You
see
know,
right through you.
okay, so yes, I was. And to that point, I was not a good student, but I was forced to read certain things in order to actually play football. So cliche for an Italian guy. But later in life, it sort of piqued my interest to read the classics, to read The Fly and to read Robert Frost and things like that, that I was just too pig-headed and dumb to do when I was younger, right? And I wonder if AI damages that. And I think the three of us are all old school. We think that kind of stuff is still important. But as I mentioned, I don't know how to churn butter. So given like what we can do with AI, do you think in the future that stuff remains important other than the three of us just knowing that it's important? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Okay, thank you for bringing that back up. There's so much there. Let me start with talking about graduation requirements because you're talking math. So, our graduation requirements in most of the states have not changed at all in decades and decades. Well, our labor markets have completely changed what kids need to know to be prepared to be successful. You look at math, like juniors always take algebra 2. Well, when was the last time you did a quadratic equation? Like, why is that a hurdle for kids to graduate? But
Me
yet
yesterday, but Jimmy a long time ago. Go ahead.
well, personal finance. I mean, that is something students need every single day for the rest of their
Yeah.
life. And very few states require that. One of the states I've been working really close with is Indiana. So spent some time up at Governor Brown's office this year, just visiting with him. And what Indiana has done to innovate their K-12 education is on a whole nother level than any other state. I recently wrote about this in the Epoch Times. You can Google it, find that article. It's called Indiana is doing more than any other state to innovate. But their graduation requirements is one of those key things. And let me just highlight that to your question. So they took out that requirement of Algebra 2. Now, kids can still take that, but personal finance is a requirement. STEM courses are a requirement. And they're bringing in things that are going to matter to having a workforce ready and a critical thinker for the future. While at the same time, like they're not getting rid of core knowledge. And so it's this balance of like, what is a core knowledge that kids need? But also like what do we need in our world today for them to be prepared versus decades ago? Like I can't even imagine that we would expect high school standards to be the same in an AI world than back when we were basically like getting electricity in our country. Like things have not changed. And so with the AI conversation as well, like right now, just kind of that latest tool, those LMMs for cheating. First, it was like the calculator, then it was the internet. Like there's always going to be something, but this one takes it next level. And so we need diligence there. We need to educate kids. We need some safeguards in place. But at the same time, like there's a lot of people are kind of like downers on like education and AI. Like it's going to destroy kids' ability to think. Well, like, we don't even know what AI is going to do 6 months from now or a year from now. Like it's innovating so fast. So yes, large learning models, these chats, like there is difficulty for those to spur kids critical thinking. It's supplanting learning, but yet let's build things that are actually going to further their learning. There's so much you can do, like personalized instruction, tutoring, helping teachers be more effective with their time, with their instruction, even things like virtual reality. Like we got to be using that and giving kids all of these experiences. I was at the White House, a guest of the First Lady in September, I believe it was August or September. And it was for the AI task force meeting. And I was one of the few educators in the entire East Room. Most of the people there were CEOs of large tech companies, whether it was HP or OpenAI, like Google, Microsoft, they were all there. And hats off to this administration to say, like, if we're going to be competitive on a world stage in the future, we cannot cut it with our education system only educating 3 out of 10 Americans effectively. Like, that is not going to work. But also bringing in these tech companies to say, we need you to invest and build those tools that will absolutely transform, particularly K-12 education in our country. And that's where it's going to go. But at the same time with safeguards, and we've got to do it well. The First Lady's been driving this, but what I really like is she announced that day that she has an AI presidential challenge. So, we had like the presidential fitness challenge back in the day. Well, now it's the AI challenge, getting kids curious, interested in AI, and creating a solution to a real world problem in their community using AI. Like that's how we're going to prepare our future innovators in this country, is not being scared of AI, but engaging kids, early literacy of it, and then just letting them experiment and try it with safeguards.
I just want to throw out, Jimmy, before I give you the next question, that Widge added after your speech there, Carrie, your answer to his question. I love this stuff. I was invited to have this exact discussion with my old high school in the late 90s. Nothing came of it. Hopefully now is the time. So you seem optimistic. Am I wrong to say that?
Definitely optimistic. Again, like I can't stress safeguards enough, but at the same time, like this is innovating so fast and it has the potential to revolutionize education in our country. And so let's keep going. Like, let's have an optimistic view that we're going to make sure America's prepared for future dominance. And we are not going to lead on a world stage in the future, whether it's the economy, national security, on any front, if we've only got 3 out of 10 kids learning the basics, let alone being prepared for the future world that they're going to enter.
So you mentioned the state of Indiana, which I'm in Illinois. So my question to you is this: is that I believe fully that it's going to work, whatever that work means. Like, when are we going to start to see test scores go up higher? You know, like the fruits of this. When are they going to be picked? And then you look at a state like Illinois, which I'm sitting in right now. When you look at the teachers union and the stranglehold they have and everything, do you just say to yourself, forget them for now, let's work on the ones who will be receptive because we can't break them? How do you feel about that?
Yes. So the best thing to do is get states competitive. And so we saw during COVID, people moved to pro freedom states. So I was in Washington, our bordering state, Idaho. There was a mass exodus, had to do with vaccines and lockdowns and all of that. But it also had to do with regulations on business. People said, I can go over here. It's much more tax advantageous to live in Idaho with my company and also give my workers a better quality of life, lower cost. So we see that. Now we see that with kids' education. As we've gone after this state by state strategy to pass the universal school choice, people are continuing to migrate to those states where they can be in control of their kids' education and have innovative options. And so that is the best way to break that stranglehold of the teacher unions is take the students out of that system, break up that monopoly, because that drives down their number of staffing their teachers, which lowers their, teacher dues. I'm not going to sit down with the teacher union and convince them, of what they need to do to improve education, but money talks when I take some of those
Oh, I
kids
love
out.
that.
But then again, let people move to these pro freedom states. I was super excited. The last state that just got universal school choice was the first one in the Northeast, New Hampshire. Those states are small geographically, people are more likely to move. That puts the pressure on, those very progressive states, Chicago kind of being the worst offender, Illinois, but particularly Chicago with the teacher unions of just banning kids from any kind of option. Let me throw this out. So in red states, the idea is like the homeschool community sometimes or rural Republicans will say, like, if you give school choice, like it's going to bring all this regulation, and it's going to hurt our ability to homeschool. Like we have seen that nowhere in a red state that has passed universal school choice. The only school choice program that has been stripped was in Chicago, in Illinois, I think beyond Chicago, for the lowest of low income families. And it was a tiny program, and they're so anti parents and kids and opportunities. They strip that. That's where it's happening in those states that are not about freedom, not about education choice. And so I did just want to dispel this notion of like education freedom brings all of this government regulation. Like the money doesn't go to the school, the money goes to moms and dads. And
Love it.
we don't try to take that money from moms and dads with food stamps or anything else, thinking like, oh, that's going to overregulate Walmart. Like that's not how it works. And so we need people to be supportive of this idea. It is going to spur economic growth in those states that choose this. And in due time, we're going after the purple states next. We're just going to cover them.
Love it. So tell me, so Indiana, the first part of the question was, are we starting to see it in test scores? Are we starting to see an acceptance rate to elite universities? Is it filtering through already, or how long is it going to take?
Well, we've already seen like pre-COVID that kids in private schools, on average, the tuition is $4,000 less per student than what that public school spends. And this is nationwide, but test scores for decades have always been higher. Same thing with the homeschool community. Now, post COVID, we have more and more kids that have this access, as I mentioned, to these school choice programs. We're already seeing their scores go up, but it is going to take longer, I will say now, because of post COVID. We had kids that some of them moved out over to maybe a private school, homeschool, micro school after like 3 years of learning loss, of being locked out of a public schools. Others moved right away. And then we also lost a lot of test data because the teacher unions were drivers of this notion of like, okay, we know we didn't teach kids for a couple of years. We can't test them. Like that's going to look bad on us. So we're missing that test data. So it will take longer now to pan out, but absolutely like free market. I mean,
Amen.
they are incentivized. It's like higher accountability because if they don't do an outstanding job, parents are going to go elsewhere. Public school doesn't have that incentive.
Carrie, I'm glad you like being on the show because you have an effect on us as well. I'm keeping an eye on Twitter here, and our friend Alex from Markets and Mayhem just said, I love this stuff. We should sync up again after the holidays, which means now I can get him as a guest on the show again, which makes my life easier. So thank you for coming on here. We enjoy it. This is not the end of it. I just wanted to say that to you because I'm
Okay.
monitoring this right here.
Well, thank you for having me. But let me say, when I was on your show, I think about a year and a half ago, I told you guys afterwards, like, this is the most fun podcast I've ever done. You were throwing some stuff at me. Like, I remember Jim was like, do you think Bernie Sanders is a moron? I was like, whoa, I've never been asked that before. How can I delicately respond?
So my question is now, do you still
Most
think
fun
Bernie
interview.
Sanders is a moron?
Well,
No, that's not my question.
I can pass that one off again.
Ask me that one because I don't think he is a moron anymore. I think he's conniving. But anyway,
we
go
were
on.
talking about, his whole 4-day work week and like,
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I remember that. Okay,
no
yeah.
concept like he was going to destroy small business.
Oh, right. Because
is
profit
where we see
motive,
business growth.
he doesn't believe in profit motive. He believes in the spirit of cooperation. Those are his words, by the way. I clean tables at my restaurant sometimes for 2 hours at a time, and it's not for the spirit of cooperation. I'll tell you that. It's to make a buck. Bobby, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I just wanted to tell Gary that because we're getting so much positive feedback, not just in the chat here, but on Twitter itself. I think there's about 1,500 people watching right now. I wanted to ask you this. You obviously have a national profile now. When we talked to you before, we're taking credit for it, but when we talked to you before,
we always do.
It wasn't as national. Where do you get the most efficacy for what you're doing? Is it on a state and local level? Is it nationally? And part two to that question is, do you trust parents? I mean, I trust the parents I know, which makes me think local is the better way to affect your views in these things. But where do you find you get the most effect?
Everywhere. People are hungry for a message of doing something different and common sense solutions. And so it doesn't matter if I'm talking to parents one-on-one, or recently I was sitting down with Secretary Scott Turner in his office. We just had about 45 minutes to visit. I was talking specifically about industry-specific high schools, a way to revitalize America, particularly even rural America, where that employer might be like the largest industry in the community. People are moving out. How do we give those people purpose and hope with their lives? Well, let's equip them to be working and contributors instead of just taking from the system. So all that to say, like, those conversations absolutely see the fruit, but one-on-one, no matter who I'm talking to, what I'm doing, I just see that people want this change, common sense. And to the other part of your question, like, absolutely, I trust moms and dads. Like, they've been with that child since birth, and they are going to be there far past the school day. They know and love their child best, and they're going to do whatever it takes for their child to have options and opportunities. And education has to be a part of that equation.
So here's where that question comes from, because as I was saying it, I'm like, wow, I sound like an asshole saying that, but here's where that question comes from. I was afraid of disappointing my parents. I was afraid of getting hit by my dad, but I was afraid of disappointing my mom because then she would tell my dad, right? And I only got hit twice by my dad, and they were memorable events because he had hands like a catcher's mitt. Jimmy, you remember those old working man Italian hands?
I do.
So the question comes from some of the behavior you just see publicly with kids at this point. Just the way they act in public, the way they're sort of disassociated, and they're all basically socially awkward. Does that come from the poor school environment they're in as much as home, or is home the bigger factor? Can school help fix that? I remember watching a debate recently. It was not a state debate, so it didn't affect my life, but one of the candidates said, I trust sporting bodies to decide whether trans kids should compete against the sex they identify in, or their birth sex, which to me is the only sex, but whatever. And I remember thinking to myself, that was very similar to parents being taken out of the equation because people say, I trust teachers to know what to do with the emotional part of a kid, as opposed to parents knowing what to do with the emotional part of a kid. And as someone who doesn't have kids, it confuses me a little bit. So I'd like both of you to answer that.
Because I want to add to that question too. Because when you ask Carrie, does she trust parents? It doesn't matter. Even, and I trust parents as well too. But even if neither of us did, and this is kind of funneling it to a question for you, Carrie, even if neither of us did, it's still absolutely of utmost importance to have them make the decisions, because we certainly don't trust anyone else making the decisions for the family outside of the parents. So if they screwed up, they screwed up. It's about freedom, correct?
Look, a kid threw a peach pit at me the other day at a farmer's market. It was a peach pit. First of all, peaches aren't in season. I don't know where he got a peach pit from. That's number one. But number two, I turned and I look at his dad. I go, he gets one of those, just so you know.
Yeah, and you're the one who's going to take the punch, man. Right?
Yeah,
So
I'm not going to punch the kid.
Oh, right. I'm going to punch the dad.
I'm sorry, Carrie.
I don't know. That's not happening to me. So I'm not sure if that's you or the kid.
When was the last time you punched someone, Carrie?
Never.
Okay, fair enough. Moving right along.
Let's move on from that. So that's what I mean by that question.
Technology for sure has broken up quality time where moms and dads could be having conversations, nurturing, discipling, educating their children. Technology has it's really hindered the family. There's a great book out there. It's been around maybe 10 plus years called The Tech-Wise Family. Highly recommend that to new parents, particularly of, do you necessarily want to put a device in the hands of your child at age 3? Maybe you're at a restaurant or in the car to entertain them. Like, do you want to start that addiction and that dependency now? Because the second moms and dads reach in to grab it, you see the tantrum, you see the defiance. And that doesn't get much difference when it's middle school, high school, but also parents. I mean, they're consumed on devices. The kids aren't getting that attention that they need. And so I think we've got a family breakdown because of technology. Jonathan Haidt, The Anxious Generation book, he's written.
That's a great book.
And anyone on this. Yes, excellent book. He's continuing to talk about it. And also with the AI generation, he's talking about that. Like, what is that going to do to kids? And I would just say, like, kids need playtime, like echoing some of his thoughts. And a lot of this stuff kind of works itself out when kids get movement and they're interacting with others. But also parents, like, you are the expert. You have got to be intentional. And raising your child on a screen may seem like convenient in the moment, but it's developing some negative character qualities and patterns in your child's behavior that, to Bobby's point, like, those don't just show in the home. Like, inappropriate things then come out at school.
Just one last thing, Jimmy, real quick. Our closest friends down here in Southwest Florida just had a baby girl, and she's almost 2 now, but they won't even use their phones in front of her. I applaud them for that. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yes. And I don't know anyone, going to that level of not, having their phone present with a baby or infant, toddler, whatever the case is. But the more we can just be intentional and not let that device take the place of face-to-face conversations, interaction, the dinner table, there's a lot of destructive things on those phones. Like, kids should not be going into their bedroom at night with that phone or computers, where it's just too much temptation. And so making sure that the family is a place where that foundation of character, values is being taught. And unfortunately, like, technology can just be a huge distraction for that, as well as letting kids in isolation learn kind of the worst of what you want for them.
Right, because it's a weird pendulum swing. Like, if you keep it totally away from your kid, as soon as the kid gets out of your control, they go the other way with it. But one thing I wanted to underscore, you talked about becoming addicted to screens, and we had doctors from Metabolic Minds on here who talked about mental health issues with children, and we talked about addiction. These things are designed to be addictive. They're designed for dopamine spikes. We think technology is our greatest friend and our greatest enemy at the same time. They're literally trying to get your 6-year-old addicted to the screen. And by the way, I've felt the pull of addiction from Twitter, like becoming addicted to likes. When you think about it in your head, do you get it like angry and like, do you think that heads should roll, or do you just want to gently move people away from it?
I think just gently, as well as, I was talking to Will Kane a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you know Will. He's
Never
just
do.
got this amazing show, 4 o'clock hour, but he's hitting out of the park with like millions of people tuning in to see it. We were visiting, and I was like, Will, first I was like, when are you going to have me on a show? Just joking. And second, I was like, you don't need me on your show. Like, but give this message. Like, I just had a couple minutes with him. Remind parents, like, he's so influential. Remind parents they have what it takes. Like, they are the expert of their child. So we talked about this a minute ago with school. Like, parents are told, like, that teacher is the expert. Like, we've got it from here. The medical profession is doing that to families as well. Like, once a child, I think, is like 12 or 13, they have to give consent if their parent knows what's going on. Well, like, who drove them to the appointment? Who made their breakfast? Who picked out their clothes? Like, this is just nonsense. So I said, well, like, use your huge megaphone and just remind parents, like, they have what it takes. They've got to be intentional. They are the very best advocate and decision maker for their child. And I think when moms and dads are reminded of that, despite the majority of the world and so called experts telling them otherwise, these things will start to go in the right direction.
Last question that I really have for you. I mean, we could stay on and talk all day. I could talk to you all day about this stuff. Again, as somebody who doesn't have kids, I look at it and I see things from sort of a different perspective. I have nieces who just are the most amazing girls. They just, I don't know. It was funny because I always feel like one parent is the disciplinarian and the other one who says everything's okay. And it was my sister who was the disciplinarian. She was the one who basically said, I'm not going to let you guys grow up into kids that I would hate. That was her way of scaring them into doing things the right way. And if I text my nieces and they don't answer, they get in trouble from their mother for not responding to Uncle Bob. And two of those girls were two of the kids who were robbed during COVID of proms and graduations and things like that. Can kids come back from that at this point in their professional life? I'm talking about post-education at this point, as much as you know about education and kids. Is it just the family structure, or is there some way that states, for example, should get involved with programs?
That's a big question. And I don't claim to be the expert with the answer on it, but I'm always going to bring a message of hope. Like, people are resilient, and like, you were never too far gone. Whatever a hardship in your life was, or a situation, like, you can have people that can come around you, change that trajectory of your life, help you overcome hardship, no matter what it is. And like, to your point, those kids who missed out in COVID, whether it was like middle school, high school, or even college, it was such a hard time for kids, that were on a college campus, but they couldn't leave their dorm, those
Yeah.
types of situations. Like, there is always going to be hope. Now we've got to be intentional and bring some solutions and support for that. But absolutely, like, anybody can come back, and we've got to get in front of this thing to equip this generation at the stage of life they're in now to truly thrive in adulthood, despite just such a detrimental season of their life. Truly, because the teacher unions, they said that it's not safe to go back to school, despite all the private schools being open since fall of 2022, despite all of the data logic, despite the fact they're on vacations, blowing school district money.
Yeah.
But anyone can come back.
But it
and we
was
can
safe
do
to
this
go to the
thing.
George Floyd protests. It was safe to go to those, but it wasn't safe to go to school. And again, in some ways, I look at the teachers union. Unions are formed obviously for safety reasons. With those, once those are taken off the table in different industries, and education is not a lot of huge safety problems. It's about getting the most money for the least amount of work. I don't think there's a big mystery in why the teachers union went down the path that they did. It's a bad model. It's a terrible model. There was one last thing I wanted to ask you, and then I wanted to go by you. But when you spoke when the Discovery Institute and you spoke at the technology conference that you just did, was that just a couple of weeks ago? Was it basically about a lot of the things we're saying, or was there anything else that stands out that you want to bring up first before we go by you?
Yes. So last week was Discovery Institute's annual technology summit. It's called COSM. Typically it's in Bellevue, Washington, but this year thought, hey, we'll go down to sunny Scottsdale. It rained the entire time. So it didn't work out as planned. But it was the first time we had an education panel in the 3-day conference. And so I was able to be on the panel with Arizona former Governor Doug Ducey, who's absolutely incredible what he's done in that state, as well as a dear friend, education reformer, Jenny Clark. So the three of us were up there, had a discussion. And what I can say is like a takeaway from that is without Governor Doug Ducey's leadership, we would not have universal school choice in this country. So it was his 8th year in the office. It was 2022. And on July 7th, he had worked year after year on this, and he was able to sign universal school choice into law. What that did is it's revolutionized Arizona. It's brought enormous savings to the state. So instead of $15,000 per student being spent in the public system, moms and dads are getting $7,500. And the demand was huge. So then you multiply all of that savings times all of the people. And despite what Secretary Katie Hobbs, who's now governor, said, like, it is not defunding the state. Like, it is putting a surplus into the budget. Just as one example, by that fall of 2022, the state had a $2 billion surplus with just one semester of this implication on the state budget. So that was amazing to do that with Governor Ducey. But that conference is all about technology, innovation. You've got a lot of companies, CEOs, startups there. And this year is focused all on AI, on all different policy areas, all different topics. Our session was AI education and educating the future workforce. And we've got to have opportunities for kids to get excited, engaged, and prepared for high growth, high demand career fields that more and more do not require a college degree. And so exposing them sooner in high school around an excellent academic education to prepare our American future workforce. And so such an honor to be there. Something I'm talking about a lot, but really grateful for those industry leaders who are saying, I want to get in this game. Like, we all can do something. And I want to be a part, whether I'm, giving financially to somebody, advocating for this or making it happen, or I want to start mentoring and be involved in kids, or I'm going to start a micro school, my company. So I've got a pipeline of incredible talent I've put my fingerprints on coming up to transform, my business.
That's amazing. And you guys out there, if you're looking at that website and thinking of going there, just think about this too. It has been decades and decades that we gave the school system to the collectivists, and they're turning out like the kids who come out of school now, 70% of them have a favorable opinion towards socialism. If you don't think this is a big deal, I think you're wrong. This is an enormous deal. They're getting an absolutely warped way of looking at the world, from economics, socially, from biologically. They don't even, well, I won't even go into that. But if you want to support Carrie's mission, click on that. $50, $100, nothing's going to hurt us. I'm going to give to it as soon as we go, and I have before. But thank you guys so much for the support you give. I really appreciate it. Bobby, you have no closing words? I can play us out.
I got one. Widge put another comment in here, mainly to me, but Carrie, to your point, I find today's young adults to be amazing, and no doubt partially due to their treatment during COVID. They got a hard lesson and have learned. And I have to agree with that, just looking at my sister's kids as an example of that.
Yeah. And again, I coach at the school, and most kids I love. I'm worried about their mind. I'm worried about the dopamine spikes and the addiction that happens too. I want them to escape this trap that it is. Anyway, this is the Future's Edge. I'm Jim Mura. But before we go, thank our sponsors, Marco at Independence Arc Farms. Please support local operators for fresh grass-fed, grass-finished beef. American Gold Exchange. The link is on our page. Just hit the American Gold Exchange if you want to buy physical gold or silver, which, as you know, I think it is the time in our life to own physical gold and silver. And our favorite sponsor, unfilteredinvestor.com, where myself, Bobby, and Mike break down markets, not just for trading, also for portfolio construction and investment. She is Carrie D. Ingraham, and that's her handle on Twitter. Please follow her. Please go to the website. Thank you guys so much. This has been The Future's Edge.